promoting forages, and his farm has been used as a master grader demo farm since 2007. With that, David Burge.
Thank you. I'm from Dave Burge from Justimere Farm, Anderson County, Kentucky. First thing I'm going to do is a little quick overview of farm history and goals, talk about some early rotational grazing efforts, and then where I've gotten to with my current setup, talk about some other grazing trials and improvements that I have made, personal experiences and mistakes, and then talk about how rotational grazing has helped me to meet my farm goals. So from a farm history standpoint, raising registered Angus seed stock since 2001, and I market bulls at bull tests and sell bulls and females off the farm, and if they don't cut the mustard, I sell freezer beef. I had an off-the-farm job until early 2014, and retired from that and doing what I love, full-time farming. I started some rotational grazing prior to that, but I got pretty serious about rotational grazing at that time. My farm mission is to produce cattle that are in the top quartile of production and carcass EPDs for the Angus breed, maintain calving ease and maternal traits that my Angus customers have become accustomed to, and all my cows are raised and maintained on Central Kentucky forage. So how do I achieve that? The entire farm, which is 110 acres, is dedicated to rotational grazing, except for a 5-acre bull lot. I strive to maximize grazing days, and all hay is produced by me off the farm. This is my friend and county agent, Tommy Yankee, helping me. This is when we were going from 4 paddocks to 8 paddocks, and everything on the interior of the farm was just a single poly wire. I had portable water tanks. All the water lines were above ground. I had portable mineral feeders, and at the beginning 4 paddocks, like I just said, and we moved to 8. At another location, I've got a few sheep. I used some electric netting for a temporary alleyway. And this is a more recent picture, although there's some 4-wire high tensile on the right. It's just a picture. All my gates were just very simple, single poly wire to start. Where I've gotten to is 15 paddocks, 5 to 8 acres each. I've got a creek, as you'll see in a minute, that's from end to end of the farm. It's fenced 30 feet or better from each bank. The creek gets grazed 1 or 2 days a month, so it kind of acts as another paddock. I've got 8 big tire water tanks, 4-wire high tensile fence in critical areas, and a lot of paddocks, and I'm adding paddocks all the time with the high tensile. And I've got 16-foot steel gates in critical and convenient places. This is, the farm is basically a big rectangle. As you can see, these W's with the circle, those are the big tire water tanks. So I've got 15 paddocks, 8 big tire waters. Some of them just serve 1 paddock, and some of them, like this one over here, I actually get 4 paddocks off of 1 water. The yellow bars are creek crossings. My cattle handling facility is right here, and then, you know, like I said, I'm a registered Angus producer, so I've got a bunch of bulls living up here. As far as permanent additions, in each paddock, I put one of these little barrels, cut about a 14-inch rectangle out, and there's a couple important things, 3 things. You want to, if you do this, you want to use a backer board. These bolts, you want to make sure you have a through bolt into whatever you're bolting to, and let's see. Oh, and don't use trees. Use fence posts. Trees just aren't straight enough to use. End up tearing them up. And then the other thing, another permanent addition that I really like, I found a steel company that had seconds on these 2x2 steel tubing for cross braces. And if you do find the seconds, they're only about $2 more than a wooden fence post, and they last a lot longer, and they do a real nice job. Here's the big tire water tanks. On the left, you see a big tire. There's a heavy use pad that surrounds that 10 feet from in every direction from the tire, and geotextile fabric underneath with about 8 or 10 inches of dense grade on top is what I use. On the right-hand side, I've got two different styles or two different designs that I've used on these. This design has concrete poured up to the bead, and then I V out a little notch here, and I fill it with silicone. And in the second design, I overflow into the sidewall of the tire, and then I come up about an inch above the bead, and I very much prefer that design. This design, I've actually had a couple minor leaks, and the other design, I have had none. The valve I use is the Job Megaflow, and I really like that. It's worked well. I am breaking a little ice the past couple weeks, but they're still doing a good job. Again, there's the 4-wire high tensile. The paddock on the right there happens to be adjacent to my working facility, so the 4-wire high tensile keeps the cows right where I need them when I need them. And as I said, I like that well enough. I'm going to progressing across the whole farm with that. And the reason I do all that stuff is that it makes it so easy to move them. You know, when this picture was taken, I was grazing the creek for a couple days, and all I do is open the gate and call the cows, and they come, and then I shut the gate. The mineral, the water, everything's already there. So what other kinds of things am I doing? Well, I've got some warm season grasses to protect from the summer slump and cool season grasses. I'm doing some weed control and some fescue seed head suppression using chaparral. And we're tracking soil organic matter and soil fertility. So on the left is a picture of a field of Indian grass that I've got that's actually adjacent to the farm, but off of that 110 acres. The cows seem to do real well on that. It made 3.25 tons of hay per acre this past year. I've got a 5-acre paddock of eastern Gamagrass, and I've got a 9-acre field of Sudangrass that I grew for the first time this year. I did an experiment where I cut part of it for hay, and then I grazed it 3 times. So this is the Sudangrass. On the left, it was about 3 weeks old. On the right, you can see where I've cut it for hay, and then I had, right after I made the hay, then I turned the cows in and let them graze it for the first time. I really like grazing it. I had trouble getting it to dry down, even with just straight Sudan grass being, you know, a little bit finer stemmed. It still didn't dry down real well. This is a 3-year stand of eastern Gamagrass. As you can tell, if you're not familiar with eastern Gamagrass, it's a pretty severe clump. So it's a clump grass. The cows like it. They'll eat it down real well, down to about a foot, and then they're done. They don't want to go any lower than that. I have made hay off of it, and I get a real good yield off the hay, but driving across it, the clump will just beat you to death. So I gave up on that. I'm just grazing that now. So this is a field that had some ironweed, some buckbrush, a little multiflora rose, kind of a myriad of things. And this is late summer in 2015. And we decided to do some weed control and some seed head suppression. This is the guy pointing this direction, Dr. Lemcooler. He's been a real mentor and advisor to me. As you can see, so this picture was actually taken in 17, but it's that same field. And even at the reduced rate on chaparral, where we were suppressing the seed heads, it really helped clean up a lot of the ironweed. And I was just telling somebody earlier, it even made an impact at that lower rate on the multiflora rose, which I was real happy with. So Dr. Lemcooler and I had a discussion, and it was all about that. Do you sacrifice the legumes to achieve your weed control and seed head suppression? And he kind of looked at me and he said, you know, your legume stand is not near what you think it is. And so he was honest with me, and we decided to go ahead with the weed control. And now what I'm doing is I do a little bit of weed control every year, and then coming in and cross-seeding 25 to 30 acres with some clover annually. We started monitoring organic content with soil samples taken in the fall of 2016, and that was, I just wanted to know that because of the soil health, and I'm getting ahead of myself, as it really gets down to the water retention and lower fertilizer costs. We're also monitoring P and K, and what we expect to see is an increase in the organic matter due to the rotational grazing, and I'm hoping to get the soil health up to where I've got the better water retention. So we all make mistakes. I guess this is where I come clean here. Early on in the grazing, we started out with, we wanted to do kind of a trial where we had a small group of conventional grazing and then rotational grazing. And I had a couple cows that were going to need to get rebred. They didn't take in the AI session, and so I put them as the control group with a bull, and then I started moving the rotational grazing cows away from him, and he was going to have no part of that, even though nobody was cycling in that other group. He wanted everybody together, so he tore up all the fences almost daily. So I learned not to do that. And the second one, first year, I think when you move from continuous grazing to rotational grazing, it's easy to look at a paddock and say, there's a lot of good grass left there. But whether you subscribe to take half, leave half, or you've got a mark on a grazing stick that you're shooting for, I would say move early rather than late, because it's that, I like to say it's that blade that's the engine that drives this truck. The other thing I had, you saw that sheep temporary netting for an alley. That was back in 2014. I had a pink eye outbreak, and I had no way to get the cows to the working facility. And right now, part of it is training. The cows know if I open a gate, they go through it, 3 years, 4 years later. But the creek also, that 30 feet on each side, that also acts as an alleyway, and I can very easily, if you remember the schematic of the farm, I can easily get them to the working facility. This next one, too many tasks for moving cows. When you got to start somewhere, so the temporary fences, the temporary waters, they all serve a purpose, but at this point with 15 paddocks, it's really nice to just open a gate. I don't have to move waters and mineral feeders and fences, and it goes very smoothly. One thing we tried to do was plant Gamagrass between corn rows. I was going to graze the corn in the fall. We didn't want to lose the use of the paddock the whole time for the Gamagrass to grow. That didn't work. I had 216 bushel per acre corn, totally shaded the Gamagrass. We lost that. And then the last thing there is be sure to calibrate your no-till drill. I used a drill this year on that Sudangrass, and the drill was in such bad shape the one I was renting that I picked up. I had to work on it for about 2 hours. The rain was coming. I walked around the back. It said Sudangrass. I put the seed in, thinking, it'll be close enough. I planted about a quarter of the field, got off, looked at the bin, and it was half gone or more. So always make sure you calibrate your drill. So as far as what's going on with the goal attainment, this spring I moved every 3 days. I was just taking off hitting the high spots. June through September, I averaged 157 head days per paddock. And I think everybody in here knows, but 30 head times 5 days would be 150 head days, so we're on the same page here. So I asked myself, I want to make sure I got 30 days of rest, so what would be my carrying capacity? So I threw out some arbitrary numbers. One of them was 60 head. That gave me 2.6 days per paddock, and since I've got 15 paddocks, I got 14 moves, so I had to have 36.4 days, and great, I could go. But we had great weather, and I have lived through a couple droughts, and I don't like those. So Dr. Lemcooler and I got together, and we talked about considering forage utilization, and then I looked inside, and I said, so how do I feel about drought risk tolerance? And I'm not very comfortable with that. So I decided 45 is my new target. I've already reduced hay fed, and this gets a little complicated because I have moved calving seasons. But I think I could be better than that right now because at this time I'm a fall calver, so I'm breeding in November and December, AI and ET, so I'm running the cows through the chutes a couple times, and I have to feed some hay when I catch them and bring them up there. But the one thing I'm doing, I am spreading the fixed cost over more cows. I can continue to work on weed control, soil health, plant diversity, and maximizing grazing, which is all stuff that I like, and I don't have to worry when the rain stops. So what kind of questions do you have?
Any questions for David?
Yeah, believe it or not, there's a strip of a farm about 200 yards wide. That's all it is. If I could ever buy that, I might. But no, I can't get the cows there.
How are you developing the bulls?
Developing the bulls? I have that one picture at the beginning. I had some where I grazed them, but for the most part, once I wean them, they're on feed. Yes. You know, I have not. I've only got a 5-acre paddock of Gamagrass, and it's all cows. And as you could see, if you put 2 and 2 together, I'm understocked as it is. My cows are already fat, and I'm not looking at them. Usually when I'm grazing that, not usually, always when I'm grazing that, it's summer, so I'm not grazing calves on that. Well, you know, there could be some weaned calves, but for the most part, it's cows, and no, I'm not. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Yes. Establishment of the Indian grass. I got lucky that there was a Indian grass switchgrass mix that was there, and I have burned it off with the help of the state, and so I didn't establish it the first time. But what I will say about the Indian grass is it's what's been persistent. The switchgrass has kind of played out, but the Indian grass just keeps coming back. It's very clean.
One more question. Lynn, you got a question back?
Well, I usually try to work it in somewhere around 1st of July. It has bailed me out a couple times on droughts, and so the way it's situated in the layout, I can easily hit it, but I can easily skip it. So sometimes I'll skip it, and this past year we had such good rain, it might have gotten a little over mature by the time I grazed it, but I kind of keep it for insurance.
All right.
Good.